20 years ago, LEGO Star Wars the video game was released for all the major gaming systems that were out at the time, and most kids at Christmas of 2005 would get this game for one of their gaming systems, assuming they had a PS2, GameCube, or Xbox. I, of course, would have got the GameCube version of this game because, well, that's the system I had at the time. But of course, it was all sold out everywhere, and the GameCube version wasn't really available in any known stores at the time, so the only ever system that I had that could run the game was the Game Boy Advance. So that's the version I got instead for Christmas of 2005, and that's before I played any of the home console versions, or even knew really anything about the home console versions, other than that was shown in some trailers, some promotional marketing material that was in the Lego Club magazine. Yeah, I was a subscriber of the Lego Club magazine at the time, and that's how I first heard of this game, because there were ads for it there. I remember seeing ads for it too at Brick City in Niagara Falls. When it came out, it was a really well-promoted game. It was like the game, people thought it was going to be the game of the year, which it kind of was. I mean, at the time, it was a really big deal to combine Star Wars and Lego and make a video game out of it. I mean, Lego was no stranger to video games at this point in time. There were plenty of other great Lego video games that existed too, most notably like the Lego Island games or Lego Loco, which were games I commonly played at this time. But I got this version of the game, a version that's actually kind of obscure nowadays. It's very different from the console version. It might as well be a completely different game. It feels more like a traditional SNES or Genesis game, and a lot of people at school didn't believe me that this version of the game existed. Then again, it's kind of a normal thing for them to not believe when I tell them about things that I have, like, you know, like some of the shows that I watch on local free-to-air TV, or obscure games I would play because I have nothing else better to play. That kind of seems to be the theme of a lot of the games that I've Let's Played this year in 2025. Well, maybe not a lot. And then again, I didn't really do a lot of Let's Plays this year. The common theme in my Let's Plays of this year seems to be games that I only played because it was all I had, and that's the reason why I played this game a lot, because it was one of the few things I had. It was all I really had for entertainment. And the Game Boy Advance that I had was one of the first models of the Game Boy Advance that had a really bad screen, because we all know this first Game Boy Advance models had a bad screen. I could barely see the game a lot of the time. You have to squint and hold it under certain lighting conditions. I was quite amazed here some time later when I got to play it on a Game Boy Advance SP, and I saw how much clearer and crisper the game looked. It felt like I was playing a different game. It's like, whoa, look how clear this all looks. This looks like a very crisp, clear game. That still didn't change the fact that this game is quite challenging, actually, and they supposedly made this game for kids at the time, but did they really think kids are going to play this game and beat it? When you run out of all your parts, there's no simple respawning where you died, like in the console version. In this version, when you get killed, you just start at the last checkpoint, and checkpoints can be very rare sometimes. You can actually go for a lot in the game before you find a checkpoint. You also have stamina too, like a limited stamina bar too, which has to recharge, something the home console version doesn't have. And there's also like character attributes too that exist in this version, like most notably we'll see in the next level where there's like Jar Jar Binks and he has a weapon that can be used, and sometimes it's like a thing you have to shoot with your gun on the walls, which doesn't really do much. And different Jedi in this game actually have different force powers too, different force abilities. I actually kind of give them praise for that actually, because it's not like every Jedi is the same like in the console version. It's actually like you play as this Jedi, you get this cool force ability, like Obi-Wan for example has the force push, and Anakin has a saber throw, and Qui-Gon has some weird ability to turn into a ghost. Is that foreshadowing what happens at the end of the movie? I don't know. It's also odd too is that gold studs actually give you more than blue studs in this game, almost as if the people who made this game didn't even know anything about the console version, and they probably didn't even know anything about Star Wars in general, considering how off this is from what Star Wars really is. For some reason, this level, they make you play as Obi-Wan, and they don't give you a choice of Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon. It was probably due to a limitation of the Game Boy Advance. I mean, the Game Boy Advance was obviously a lot more primitive and very limited compared to the console versions of the game. It's not really anything, it's not really anything we wouldn't know about, because everyone kind of knew that Game Boy Advance games aren't going to be as good as their console counterparts. In this case of this, like I said, this is a completely different game. That's why I'm doing a Let's Play of this game. It deserves to be Let's Played. It is a completely different game in the it actually is like a fairly, this game isn't, I wouldn't call this a bad game per se, but it definitely is inferior to the console version. I can see why kids wouldn't like this version as much, because it's just way too challenging a lot of time. Like a game that should have come out like 15 years ago on your SNES or Sega Genesis or something like that, but no, they put it on this. Instead, they put it on, well, they make it like, Game Boy. Then again, the Game Boy Advance did have the reputation for being the pocket SNES. It's like having an SNES in your pocket, is what some people would say about it. And a lot of games on it were ports of SNES games. Yeah, imagine that, having almost no video games, and this is one of the games you add. I mean, this isn't the worst you could possibly play. I mean, this isn't the worst. There's a lot of games that are probably way worse than this. And the levels seem to be a lot longer too. Well, some levels are a bit longer too. This level seems to be quite longer. I mean, the console version, you could easily get this level in like the blink of an eye. But this version, they dragged it out to several segments. Each segment's a checkpoint. And they always fill it, and they actually add like an element of free roaming into this version too, which is also something the console version doesn't really have. The console version's more like a Crash Bandicoot type, like 3D platformer, where you follow a preset track most of the time. You just follow a path, and sometimes you go to different paths sometimes, where you have to like, you know, sometimes you do have to deviate from the main path, but most of the time you're just following a path and just running along. It's not really exploration based a lot of the time, but this version actually does have a lot of exploration in it. So like it's like open, it's like more like a Spyro game almost. It's like wide open worlds where you could run around and find enemies and collect stuff. And collect the Death Star plans. There aren't any mini kits in this version of the game. Instead, they have Death Star plans. Ooh, maybe the Trade Federation was planning on building the Death Star, and as early as the time of Phantom Menace. Maybe they're also foreshadowing some Star Wars lore. And Star Wars lore was pretty convoluted around the time this game came out. This game obviously came out during the time Star Wars Episode 3 was out, and well, it actually came out a little bit before Episode 3 actually, and that was one of the biggest, one of the biggest draws of this game, or one of the biggest things the game used to entice you to want to buy it. Oh look, Star Wars Episode 3, that new critically acclaimed movie everyone's talking about, is playable in this game. You can play it in this game and play all the best scenes in the movie. Yeah, what are the best scenes in that movie anyways? Well, this game has a pretty wonky definition of what the best scenes in that movie is. Same with Episode 2. This game also has some weird ideas of what the best scenes in Episode 2 are too. And this might very well be one of the most unique and also least accurate depictions of the Star Wars prequel trilogy that exists. And the game, like I said, does make you pick up those studs, of course, just like the old console version. And studs actually kind of work a little bit differently in this version. You don't just get scored based on how many studs you collect, you also get scored based on how many how many times you deflect a blaster bolt from an enemy, and how many enemies you kill too. It's like the game's rewarding you for killing stuff. You know, the Jedi way is totally to go out and kill stuff, go full Rambo on them, and just murder tons of enemies for no apparent reason. Well, they are enemies, so I guess they have a right, they deserve to be murdered in a way, but it actually scores you based on a lot of other stuff, which I think that is pretty impressive that actually did that. The people at Amaze that made this game Amaze with Kryptonite Games, or whatever they were called, actually did a pretty great job of this overall, actually. I think this game can be an underrated classic sometimes. Sure, it's definitely not perfect, but if you don't know how to overlook its flaws, it actually is a pretty great classic, something you could play while you're out and about somewhere. I mean, they probably didn't make this game as good, too, because they probably figured, this is for kids. And kids are much easier to please. You just give a kid a character to play as and with a lightsaber and they'll love it. Even though we played as Obi-Wan in that level, without any choice of any other character, we unlocked Qui-Gon Jinn for some reason for completing that level as Obi-Wan. I don't know what kind of sense that's supposed to make, but you only unlock one character per level anyways, and you have to still buy them afterwards anyways, which is kind of a ripoff. It should just give you the characters like it did in the console version. So we have no choice of character. We're playing as Qui-Gon Jinn for some reason on the planet Naboo. Well, in the swamps of Naboo. As you drag this out into a much longer level too of like hidden traps. I don't know what that thing's supposed to be. Is that one of those monster things from Empire Strikes Back that lived in that asteroid? And there's battle droids that are camping out inside. Christ, they didn't want to get killed. And look at that, it ate some Death Star plans too. Wonder if Qui-Gon Jinn knew about the Death Star. And I wonder what he would have thought of the Death Star as well too, Qui-Gon Jinn. Because there was those videos where people say, oh, what did this character think of this? What did this Star Wars character think of this? Sure, he died long before the Death Star was built, but it's possible he may have still known about it somehow in the Force, maybe. Yeah, I could imagine there being a YouTube video on that. They're on the Gungan outskirts. Ooh, the Gungan outskirts. Where it's setting up something like, oh, we need a minifigure of like springs in his legs that can jump really high. And oh look, we have our answer right there. It's every 5-year-old's favorite Star Wars character. Darth Maul? No, of course it's not going to be Darth Maul. It's going to be Jar Jar Binks. Everyone's favorite cartoon rabbit is what Mr. Plinkett calls him. Because Jar Jar Binks is always made for the 5-year-olds to love this movie. Because, I mean, these movies are pretty much made for 5-year-olds. Why do you think they have so much convoluted plot and tons of action? That'll make kids love it. And especially because 5-year-olds love action, and they're not going to care about the broken plot or the wonky dialogue or all that mushy romance crap that seemed to dominate Star Wars Episode 2 and no one else cares about. This is what makes Jar Jar different in this version. He actually is kind of superior in this version than he is in the console version, simply because he has those blue baldings. Yeah, getting blue balled. A lot of people were blue balled when they saw Phantom Menace for the first time back in 1999. And I loved that movie back in the day, and I had no idea until years later that so many people hated Phantom Menace. I always loved it when I was a kid. Yeah, sure, there was a principal in elementary school that hated it, and he used to punish kids for talking about it because he really hated it so much. But I loved it. Every kid I knew at the time loved it too, and every kid I also knew loved this. So now you see this as Qui-Gon Jinn's force power. It's his ability to turn into a ghost like that. I don't know if they were hinting at there, or the real purpose of this was. It doesn't really make him invincible either. If he really was a ghost, he'd be invincible. The shots would just fly through him, but that doesn't really do much. It makes him move slower too, and it makes him a bigger target too. It's actually kind of a useless power. I mean, I like what they were trying to do there, but it actually is kind of useless. I'm just going to focus on deflecting shots because we get scored for that too. There we go. Sometimes if you could get like an infinite number of enemies to spawn, sometimes you could really rack up a lot of points by just standing there and destroying them. You also get ranked too based on how well you did in the level. There's Padawan, Knight, and Master. I don't know if that actually does anything to your score overall. And sometimes Yoda just randomly comes out. He praises you at the end of every level, and then he says, oh, this is a secret code. On pause screen, enter code. And supposedly those codes unlock characters you weren't supposed to play as otherwise. Why not? I don't know. I was never able to get any of those codes to work. I remember some kids used to go to like the Scholastic book fairs or something like that, and they would find books of cheat codes in them. There'd be cheat codes for this game, and it would list all of them. Yeah, why unlock the codes yourself when you could just, learn how to cheat? Just get a book on how to cheat. And I don't even need a book anymore. You probably just find them on the internet nowadays. Everyone finds everything on the internet these days. Why is the internet so dependent on everything? My new computer is very dependent on the internet now. I'm actually using my new computer to play this game right now. Yeah, that's how great my new computer is. It can play Game Boy Advance games perfectly fine if it had any issues. So could a budget netbook from 2010. That budget netbook from 2010 could play these kinds of games perfectly. I remember when I had a budget netbook once that ran Windows 7 Starter, and I hated it. I didn't even know it was Windows 7 Starter. I just thought, that's just what Windows 7 is like. It just randomly minimizes programs and doesn't let you bring them back up again. So you can lose progress in your games. Yeah, that's why I didn't like Windows 7 for so many years. It wasn't until I realized that, that was Windows 7 Starter that was like that. So we're going to be going to the underwater city where we'll meet the Grinch and some of his people, and Jar Jar's going to go like, oh, wada wada! Yeah, they're using the very classic bomb. What was that thing was called? I don't even remember what that transport thing was called. I remember Obi-Wan asking, hey, Qui-Gon, sir, what's this? And he's like, it's a transport of some kind. Like, Qui-Gon somehow knew everything about the Gungans and what they have, and Obi-Wan didn't. Probably because he doesn't live with the Gungans. So we see Padme is in danger. Find those battle droids are capturing her. We'll be taking on Feed next time. This is Ray Phoenix, signing out.